Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you are in this world. This is Agent Lee with an update for Bitcoin. A little bit early today. I will be on the road most of today. But I wanted to bring this back to where it was before, a wedge. Pattern-wise, a wedge. Elliott wave-wise, it's a 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So if this fifth wave potentially completed the higher degree of trend wave 5, it fits quite well to the ending diagonal. And ending diagonal, as I had mentioned before, occurs when prices run too fast and too high. And thus it signals that there's an exhaustion in the buyers. So if this is the case, then price has clearly broken through, breached the lower trend line, and price is now trying to retrace, and quite often it retraces back to the underside, the underbelly of the lower trend line. So the key thing right now is to see if we get a lower low. In other words, below the 8,033. If that is the case, then we've reached a temporary top, not a final top. It's just a temporary top where, since 5 waves completed, the requisite ABC has to probably play out. Maybe to the 7K zone. Maybe only to the 7.4K zone. But it cannot be dismissed that if 5 waves are complete, the 3-wave requisite correction is unavoidable. So I think that really needs to be put into consideration, especially given this wedge diagonal pattern that looks just perfect. It has fit every requirement, and the lower trend line has been breached. What I mean by the fact that this is not a final top is we simply have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 reached. If 5 is not going to go to the mid 9Ks, then we're going to have a correction. According to this, as long as price stays above the 50-week moving average, it's a buy. Therefore, BTFD. If this even corrects down to the 50-week moving average, which is at 5.6K, you BTFD that. Okay, so we have a very bullish right translated pick that's pretty much complete. And thereby we need to reset and have another one start. Whether that reset occurs mid-June or so, that's the question. I think it could be very probable. The impulse has in this chart 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, I believe, has been invalidated, at least from this perspective. Okay, because 4 cannot overlap with 1, and that clearly is the case. And this is not a diagonal, so it doesn't have that exception. The only other way that you can label this is saying this is a 4 and 5 is over here. Okay, but still, then what you're saying is this was 1, and we're going through a 2 correction. And everything, 3, 4, and 5, will be much higher than where it would have been. This has potential. However, in the light of the fact that we have the wedge being broken, tells me that, well, if that's the case, then potentially maybe that is a signal of an A, B, and a C. However, regardless, if we go back to this and say this is a 2, and maybe the 2 is finished, I don't know. Maybe this could have been the ABC, and we'll just skyrocket from there. Okay. But I think the buying pressure is a bit exhausted. And that's pretty much what all of this is saying, and this as well. this was probably an A, B, and we may be looking at a C wave decline, especially if it starts going vertical and goes below the 8,033. And that would look like maybe we have the A, B, and C to that effect. I mentioned yesterday for any long positions, the upside has limited potential. There's very limited upside. That means that the limited upside will not allow you to enjoy the 50, 70, 80, 151% profit, maybe at the most 15, 20%. So what does that mean? I've said it may probably be time to start taking some off the table, especially in light of this. Okay? The primary sequence is also in a bit of a jeopardy where we can say this is a 1, this is a 1 here, and 2, and everything has to shift to the right because time has elapsed. Okay? And if that's the case, then we would go into a time expanded zone of this impulse being 1, 2. And if this is going to play out, we would get a higher high above the 8,800 today. But I think that becomes less and less likely as time passes, because this really takes the formation of the more of a topping pattern, and that is going to decline into more of a correction. So for this week, I think we need to keep a very close eye on this diagonal pattern that probably completed. With high confidence, it likely completed, and then we may be on a C wave decline of this ABC correction. And this ABC could just be the subwaves of the higher degree of trend A. Okay, and that means that A wave will be followed by a B wave bounce, probably to somewhere in this region, and then the C wave decline will likely commence. So yes, it will be a bit of a correction, usually 0.38% retrace. And if we look at this from a daily perspective, the 0.38 retrace would be, the 0.38 is usually the Fibonacci number on a bull cycle where the requisite correction retraces to. So if we measure that out, the 0.38 will be at the 6,800, pretty much at the beginning where the wedge started. Okay, so the other thing to look at is the volume. So if we look at the volume on the decline side, we clearly see a very precipitous drop. As to whether this will just mean a regroup and a resurge, okay, but after seeing since December to now a very phenomenal one, I think a temporary top makes good sense. And again, that means taking some off the table. If you've been in it since December to now, you've banked well over 150% or so, what have you, and maybe 200% if you're lucky. If that's the case, if you're sitting on profits like that, time to be taking profit sell actions is now, instead of buying with open arms, hoping for that limited upside of 15 to 20% or so. So for this week, again, let's keep a very close eye on this pattern and this sequence and see if this ABC actually generates a lower low. Remember, I said I'm half in, half out. I've got my stop. Okay, I've initiated this stop and this stop on my 50% remaining. I'm half out of that, and I'll be all out by this then. Still thereby preserving profits. Okay, I hope you find this helpful. I'll be coming up with a midday update later today.